Hi, my name is Tom Taulli. I'm the author of the new book, Generative AI, How ChatGPT and Other AI Tools Will Revolutionize Business, and the publisher is Apress. In terms of my background, I've been in technology, which seems like for most of my life. I got involved in computers when I was a freshman in high school. My dad bought me a computer. I fell in love with the machine, started programming, and actually sold some of the programs during that time. And then when I got into college, I began my career mostly as an entrepreneur, building some companies. And the timing was pretty good because the internet just came on the scene and was taking off. So there was a lot of opportunity. But during that time, I did a lot of writing for publications like Forbes, covered very interesting topics in the technology area. There was always something new to write about. So I was kind of on this dual track of entrepreneur and writer. And then, in terms of AI, I've always been interested in it since I was a kid. I watched the movies, fell in love with those movies, but realized that there wasn't a lot in terms of a business for AI. But that changed in the last 10 years with the cloud computing, the availability of data, concepts like deep learning. They all just kind of came together at the same time and powered this industry forward. And so I wrote a book for Apress called Artificial Intelligence Basics, and it did pretty well, and it's actually still doing well today. And then about a year ago, I just started to hear a lot about generative AI and some of the interesting applications, especially in the marketing area. And I thought it might be a good place for a book. And then ChatGPT launched in November, and I thought this definitely will probably be a good topic for a book. Looking back on it, it doesn't seem that it was that quick because it was a lot of work. So I would say it took about 4, maybe as much as 5 months in terms of the time period that I had to put into this book. The challenge was not the time period to write a book, because the way I do it is I set aside every day how many words I need to write to reach my goal. It's usually about 500 to 600 words a day. And if I keep to that, I get a book, no question about it. Just kind of the way my mind works, and how I operate. In fact, that's how Stephen King. So I read a lot of Stephen King books, and he says the same thing. You just got to get in your chair and just start writing, and write a certain amount every day, and you'll get there. The challenge, though, with this book was that every day there was something new and something huge. So that made it difficult to somehow make the book cohesive and making sure I covered everything. And then there's the fear that, I publish this book and then there's some big development and I'll miss that development. So that was the other thing in the back of my head. And the big thing for me was GPT-4, because when I wrote it, or started writing this book, it was not available. Now there's a lot of talk that it was going to come out, but I didn't want to be at the situation where the book is published and there's really no information on GPT-4. But the good news is that it did come out earlier than I thought it would, and it's in the book. But again, like I said, it was a challenge. It was unlike other books because this is such a dynamic industry. Things move very fast. You can look back to the early days of AI, back in the 1960s, for example, and there were early versions of generative AI. One of the applications was called Eliza, and it was the first chatbot. It was very obviously simplistic because of the state of the technology at the time, but for its time, it was a pretty revolutionary technology. And Professor Weizenbaum, Joseph Weizenbaum, who was at MIT, created this application, and it was hooked to a teletype, and people would type information to the bot and get some answers. And the most popular application was a therapist. So people would tell the Eliza their problems, And in some cases, the users thought Eliza was real. Seriously, they thought Eliza was real. Or they preferred interacting with Eliza than with a real therapist. So that, was a big moment in AI, showing that it could have real world implications. And, it could take on, kind of these human forms in nature. Now, from that point on, there was a huge amount of development, but it was basically, some big developments, and then they would stall for a while. But the biggest development with generative AI came in 2017 with a paper written by Google researchers. The paper was called "Attention is All You Need," and it came up with a transformer model. And what was different about this model is that, unlike other models where it would basically analyze one word at a time, this would analyze all the words simultaneously. And this is where the big power in generative AI is, that it'll find these relationships, these complex relationships in the text, and then create this content that just seems human-like. It just seems magic. And so why do you need to understand this technology? And I think the reason is it's going to impact so much of what we do, personally, how we interact with companies. We're going to, deal more and more with these chatbots at the office, in our workplace. We're going to start using these automation technologies to help with our jobs. So, this technology is pervasive, and it's for knowledge workers. And there are, about 2 billion knowledge workers in the world. So, the numbers are massive. The impact is potentially massive, and that's why I think it's important for people to understand what generative AI is all about. I think one of the problems is that, this is trained on huge amounts of information. That information reflects society. So it'll reflect some of the bad things about society, whether our prejudices, our biases, and that can come through in the output of these models. So, you got to be careful when implementing these, to make sure that, you understand that, in certain contexts, maybe you just don't want to use the technology. I know there are even companies that won't use it for recruiting employees for fear that there could be liability issues if you deny someone employment because of, what the AI said. So you got to be very careful. So I think, that's one of the big issues. The other issue is what are known as hallucinations. And this is where the AI just makes up things, or it just tells misleading things. Now it's getting better and better. The evolution from GPT-3 to GPT-4 has shown this, and other models have shown this as well. But hallucinations are a continuing problem, and I have a feeling it'll probably always be a problem with these systems. So now there are ways to help counteract that. For example, you could tell it, provide citations, to support your arguments when you're interacting with something like ChatGPT. Or even you can say, be accurate. Just even tell it to be accurate, or tell it to not make up things. It doesn't always work, but there are some techniques you can use to help minimize some of these hallucinations. But I think the main thing is you just don't take whatever the LLM says at face value. You want to make sure you verify it. The nature of breakthroughs is they're just almost impossible to predict. Who predicted ChatGPT would be as big as it did? Even those who created ChatGPT at OpenAI underestimated the impact. They thought it would do well. They didn't understand it would just be this huge phenomenon. So predicting technology is a hazardous activity. Going to the hallucinations, I'd like to see more progress with that, and also, these models, doing better in terms of supporting arguments when it comes to factual aspects of the content it's creating. But I also think that it's important that these systems are better able to take in these prompts and understand the prompts. For example, when you have a longer prompt, there's a lot of research that shows that the LLM can get lost and, you know, and then start hallucinating even more. So we're seeing these models with these, you know, it's called the context windows, the amount that you can put into the prompt. And it also includes what the output will include as well. And these are getting bigger and bigger. That's fine. But if it's not doing well in understanding those prompts, that's a problem. So I think I would like to see more on that. And I know there's a lot being, you know, invested in that and studied on it. But if there's one area I'd like to see more improvement, it would be that you could put these large prompts in there and that these LLMs can understand what, you know, what you're trying to tell it and give you the answers that you want.